Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another vlog. In this week's vlog, I will be doing something kind of pretty exciting, something pretty exciting, and that is reading fantasy romance new releases. Now, I will admit, some of these on the list are not new releases this year. They're just new releases to me because I finally got access to them through my library and stuff like that. So, some of them are true new releases, like they came out within the last 4 months. Some of them are a little bit older than that, but we're gonna ignore that. So, first up, as far as the books that came out already this year, we have A Harvest of Hearts. This follows, I believe, like heart sorcery magic stuff. This is comped for Howl's Moving Castle, which I love, and it says it's a whimsical and unforgettable story of fantastic adventure, common sense, and the power of love to overcome the greatest obstacles. I think the idea is that there's like reapers, but they take hearts and they accidentally take the main character's heart. I'm excited for this. I think I'm gonna really like this. If a comp is Howl's Moving Castle, then we're in for a good time. And then the other new release, and then we have another one coming down the line that if I get through these first, then I'll get to that one, but we'll get there when we get there. But the other new release is Blood Beneath the Snow. This says Ravinia is no stranger to struggle. She's a member of the royal family with no magical ability. She has a found family with other outcasts, and she's put in trials. Not the biggest trial fan. I'm tired of reading trials. We have so many stories with trials recently, especially in the romantasy space. So many trials, so many academies. Obviously this one doesn't have an academy, but we'll see how that one goes. And then the two that have been out for a while and or since like last year that I want to check out, purely because they finally came through my library. The first one is A Fate Inked in Blood. I have read Danielle L. Jensen's more popular series. I liked it okay. I thought the first two were fine. I didn't finish out the third one. I liked her writing. I thought it was fun and intriguing, so I'm interested to see what she does with like this more Norse mythology situation. I believe the main character is married to a jarl or an earl or something like that, and she falls in love with his son. So we'll see how this one goes. This one seems to be very hit or miss with people. I know this is not new. I know that like the second or third one is coming out this year, but... And then the last one that I would like to read this year is purely because it has a 2.9 rating on Goodreads, which honestly, I never see things rated that lowly, especially in the fantasy romance sphere. When it comes to fantasy romance, everybody has such varied taste that people are very rarely ever united on the front that something is bad. So the fact that Sanctuary of Shadows has a 2.9 just blows my mind. I don't know what people hate about this book, but it seems like people do not like this book. We're gonna give it a shot. Side note, this is just a standard hardback. I don't know if they're doing standard hardbacks with sprayed edges now or not, but here we are. Circus Story. The circus is a place filled with wonder and amazement. A strange new attraction with no name, no memory of who and even what he is. We'll see. Don't know where the fantasy comes in. Don't know what the full story is about, but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see how this goes. So we're going to be giving this a shot. And then the book that I also might read this week, if I get through these, is The Rose Bargain. I got the Fairy Loot edition, had never heard of it before, but I know that it's a YA fantasy romance situation that people really like. Possibly read that if I get through these. It's on my TBR, like my physical TBR, so any chance to get through those is a good one. But that is what we are reading. Let's get into the vlog. I really hope you guys enjoy it, and we will talk later. So I am 133 pages into A Harvest of Hearts, and this is an interesting one. It's very different than any romantasy, fantasy romance novel that I have read. It doesn't follow the typical beats. It definitely has very similar feelings as like Howl's Moving Castle. The story feels much the same. In the beginning of the novel, we are introduced to our main character, Foss. She is a butcher's daughter, and she lives in a small town, kind of on the outskirts of this kingdom. In the kingdom, there are these things called sorceresses, and they protect the kingdom from war and outside forces and stuff, but in order to make their magic work, they need parts of people's hearts. So they go to the outside villages and harvest hearts from the people that live in the outside villages. The main character, her village gets visited by a sorcerer. They've never seen a male sorcerer before. They have only seen sorceresses. She gets her heart stolen, or part of her heart stolen. She's not really sure. So she goes on a adventure to figure out what the situation is. She shows up in the main city where all the sorcerers are, and where all the sorceresses are. She finds his house, and she convinces him to hire her as his live-in maid. He has a talking cat, and he has a sentient house. He sort of controls everything. Like the house is independent of him, but it works off of his magic. And she also, within the past couple of chapters, has fallen in with other people who have gotten their hearts taken. They're called like snags. Everybody has like a different experience. Some people fall in love with the people that take their hearts. Some people, they only have slivers taken. Some people, they have their whole hearts taken. But it seems to be, two things seem to happen regardless of what your heart's status is. One, you die within a couple of years, and two, you start to have like this mold thing growing in you. Foss, she has not noticed a big change with her heart. She hasn't noticed the mold or anything like that happening, but she's obviously not very thrilled by the idea that her heart was stolen. And the sorcerer, whose name is something silly, Sylvester, doesn't even remember her. He doesn't even remember taking her heart or anything. She has worked her way into his house as his maid, and she's trying to find her heart, and she doesn't know what she's gonna do with it. But the snagged have said that they know someone from another kingdom who can restore their hearts if they find human hearts to restore it with. I saw a lot of complaints and heard a lot of complaints from reviewers talking about how the heroine constantly talks about how ugly she is. She's plain with red hair, and she's solid, and she doesn't have a pretty face, and so she's very, very, very insecure. And she's talking about it a lot. I wouldn't say it's like constantly, it's not like every page, but I would say every new situation she goes into, she definitely mentions how ugly she is, or she'll like put on an outfit and she'll be like, well, if I was pretty, this would look good, but I'm plain and ugly, so this looks bad. It's a little bit frustrating, and I do know that that does not go away, and I'm not saying that like through the story she should find herself or whatever. I think you can have an insecure character from beginning to end and that be fine. I think people live with insecurities their whole life, and that's not a problem. But I can imagine how frustrating it would be if that's like her main character personality. I'm not hating it by any means. I definitely get the comparison obviously to Howl's Moving Castle, and it feels very like whimsical and very like floaty and fun. We obviously have the inclusion of the talking cat, which is interesting, and the magic. There's like this dark undertone, honestly think fits well with Howl's Moving Castle. I think Howl's is very whimsical and fun, but there is like this undercurrent to it that I find matches this pretty well. At this point, it's like a 4-star. I think it's really, really solid. I don't necessarily see the romance like Howl's Moving Castle. Sylvester has had very little on page time, there's been very little interaction between the two. Foss has this like infatuation love situation with him that is very artificial because she's only in love with him because he took her heart. And I don't quite know how we're gonna get to actual infatuation, actual love. I'm here for the ride. I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm enjoying the vibes of the story and I'm just here, you know, I'm enjoying myself. So I'm gonna continue reading it and we'll see how it ends. Like I said, I'm not like putting all my hopes into this novel, expecting it to be the, you know, the best romance that I've ever read or the best novel that I've ever read. And it's refreshing to go into a book feeling like that, weirdly enough. Obviously every book I go into I'm like, this could be a 5-star, and I get excited and stuff, but I have like zero expectations for this to be the next best thing. That being said, I'm gonna spend the rest of the evening reading until my partner gets home. It is about an hour until he gets home. I do need to start our food. I'm making katsu chicken with fake chicken ramen for dinner. I'm hoping that it'll be very good, but I have about 30 minutes until I need to start that. So I'm gonna read for the remainder of that, probably get a little bit more done, hopefully. And then we'll see how we feel. I'm hoping the lighting isn't too terrible. I was not planning on filming today because I had a really rough therapy session that was really needed, but it just completely took me out. But I finished Harvest of Hearts and I wanted to talk about it so that I could get into Blood Beneath the Snow. So I think the last time I updated you, I was a little bit under halfway through. And halfway is kind of when the book completely falls apart. I was adoring the first half. I was adoring the house moving castle comparison themes, what have you. And then the story completely changes to the point that it doesn't even feel like the same story. There's so much action and adventure and like problem solving and magic stuff going on in the last half that just doesn't feel like the same story. And that's where all of the issues with the characters and the lack of clear guidelines with the magic and all of that just completely like starts making itself very noticeable. And I wouldn't necessarily say that this is like a romance forward fantasy. I wouldn't even necessarily say that I like the romance personally. The book ended up being a 3-star. Like I said, I really loved the beginning portion, but that last portion was a little bit of a nightmare, to be honest. I was really struggling, especially after like the 60% mark. I was really struggling to understand how and why we had so much left of the story to go. But now I want to get into Blood Beneath the Snow. And I was checking this out on Goodreads. I tend not to like to read Goodreads reviews before I go into a novel, especially with fantasy romance. Fantasy romance is like one of the only genres where I have difficulty going in not already being influenced by other people's opinions. So if I read Goodreads reviews that are like, the writing's bad, the characters are annoying, whatever, I'll kind of go in looking for those signs. I briefly looked at Goodreads. I didn't look at any of the reviews, but this has like sort of a low rating, not as bad as the other one, but it's like a 3.7 or something like that, which is not great, especially because this came out in March. We're gonna give it a shot. I mean, I'm here for it. I'm here for a good old fantasy romance time. I'm really hoping that I don't work tomorrow so that I can spend the evening reading this and spend tomorrow reading this It's not terribly long. It's under 400 pages, which is cool. And I'm hoping that I like it. Depending on how quickly I read, we might get to 2 other fantasy romances on my actual physical TBR that I would like to read. If not, I think I'm going to do another fantasy romance reading vlog next week. It's gonna depend on how I'm feeling when I finish reading all of these books. We'll see. I never feel like I've read enough fantasy romance. There's always more for me to read, and I do have a ton, like I said a couple vlogs ago, on my Kindle. So that is the update. Go ahead, check this out if you're interested, and let's get into this one. This is also on Kindle Unlimited if you're interested. Okay, so excuse the sideways clip. I am 120 pages into Blood Beneath the Snow, and I can confirm that this book sucks ass. So we're gonna start our next read, and I was gonna go to Sanctuary of Shadows, but I don't think I can read a 3rd book in a row. That sucks, or that disappoints me. So we're gonna try with a Fate Inked in Blood, and hopefully this goes well. So we started a Fate Inked in Blood. I am 127 pages in, chapter 14. I have like that much until the halfway mark. And I know that this wasn't everybody's favorite. There was kind of a like contention amongst romantasy lovers of whether people liked this or not. So far, I'm enjoying it. I do know that it seems to like fall off towards the mid to the end, so we'll see how it goes, but so far I'm liking it. I like Danielle L. Jensen's writing, and it doesn't feel that different than the Bridge Kingdom. So I'm enjoying myself. This is about Freya, who in the beginning of the novel is married to this guy who she doesn't really like, who's kind of an asshole, and he sells her out to their Jarl, claiming that she has some powers that she's been kept hidden. And this is based on Norse mythology, and the idea is that when a child is conceived, the gods can give them an ounce of power, and she was given an ounce of power by a minor goddess, and she was told to hide her powers by her parents. And it turns out that this prophecy was foretold when she, like before she was even born, that a descendant, or I don't know exactly what they're called, but someone who has a drop of her power will unite the kingdoms. And it was told to the Jarl. So she gets sold by her ex-husband, and she becomes the second wife to this guy who's trying to use her powers to become the king and unite the Nordlands. And she has like a thing with his son. His son is like her bodyguard. Not gotten too terribly much in the way of romance or really like a lot of plot as far as where the plot is going to go. I never even read the description, so I don't really know what the overarching plot is, but I'm liking it. I think it's fun. I like the action and I don't know, the grittiness of this, so I have no complaints. I'm sure we'll see how my opinion changes as the book goes on. For now, I'm here for the fun times. I'm gonna probably be reading for the rest of the evening. That being said, there is a new character being released in Marvel Rivals, and they're doing like a reveal early access thing, and so I'm probably going to be watching some streams on Twitch for that character, see how she plays and all that kind of stuff. So I'll probably be bouncing between watching that, which starts in a couple of hours, and reading this, and I will give you guys an update when I'm halfway through. I definitely think I should be able to finish this and Sanctuary of Shadows by the end of the weekend. I'm gonna watch my Twitch, I'm gonna read my book, and we'll talk later. I am well on my way to finishing the last book for this video. So let's very quickly talk about A Fate Inked in Blood. I get the low ratings for this. This was very, very, very frustrating to read. When I updated you at the like 100-page mark or whatever, I had not quite gotten to the repetitive cycles that this novel falls into. There wasn't much about this that I liked. The story was neither deeply emotional and triumphant and like dark or fun and fast paced. It was like trying to be both and failing at both. And the main character was just constantly put in these terrible situations and being told that she's like the best, the strongest, the whatever, and she has no backbone in the moments that matter, and then she makes the stupidest decisions. And the story is incredibly repetitive. It's the same villainous monologues over and over again, villainous decisions, where I felt like the main villain was just like twisting his mustache the entire time. The twist at the end was not, like we all saw it from a mile away, you know? As soon as the idea of this thing was introduced, we knew what was happening. The romance was all lust, which is not my thing. I don't like that, and so there wasn't a ton about this that I liked, and I definitely will not continue the series. I gave this 2 stars, and I'm just really disappointed in this because the first 100 pages or whatever, I was feeling it, you know? And it wasn't until like the halfway mark that I was like, this is bad. And then on to the very, very lowly rated Sanctuary of the Shadow. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a circus novel. I'm a little over 50% of the way in. I'm on page 209 of like 390 something or 400 something. And they're pretty much gone from the circus within the first couple hundred, or the first like 70 pages. Haro, who is a elemental living amongst humans in an elemental circus, but no one knows that she's an elemental. And then the ringmaster for the circus brings in a strange new attraction who he claims is a wraith, but Haro doesn't agree with the way that he's being treated. She feels like this attraction to him and this connection to him, and so they make a plan to escape. They escape at like 70 to 90 pages, and then the rest of the time they're just like in this inn banging, and then we're seeing other very minuscule amounts of other storylines or other like overarching plot lines coming in through other people's points of view. And so I can definitely see why this has such a low rating. I was pretty okay with it in the beginning. I was like, I don't really understand why people feel like this is so bad. It kind of just felt like a really standard fantasy romance. Like, it wasn't anything that I feel like a lot of people should hate, like the reviews kind of make it seem like. It's not, you know, terrible. The fact that the last like 50 pages have just 50 to 100 pages have just been them banging and not much else. No conversations, no nothing, no like clear decision making is very frustrating. And the fact that I can feel the story carrying us along to the point where the final conflict can happen is frustrating. I don't like when authors don't know what their middle bits need to be. It's very similar to this. They knew where they wanted their story to ultimately end up for the rest of the series or for whatever, but they didn't know how to get there. And that's how this is feeling. They're just holed up in a room and we're getting like sex scene after sex scene with occasional conversations. They've already basically said they love each other, and it's just, yeah. I wouldn't say that this is the worst thing that I have ever read, but it's like basically this was way more disappointing because I was way more into this to begin, but this has been just really like you know. So I think I'm gonna finish reading it, and then I might take a break from fantasy romance and move on to another genre. But yeah, so far not the best. Not the best. I'm pretty disappointed with everything that I've read in this video. So that being said, I'm gonna finish this out. We'll talk about my final thoughts and then we will wrap up the video.